and welcome back. May I have your seats? I see that the energy level is up after the coffee break and some refreshments. Dear colleagues.
Dear participants. We're still missing Maria.
Dear colleagues, participants.
We're missing one.
Okay, now we start. So please, quiet.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome again for the second part of this morning session. As you have been able to see on the agenda, it's now about supervising bodies. Quite normally, usually, if this kind of new technologies arises, it first starts with politicians having an opinion about it, and then standardization organizations. But in the end, it only works if there is somebody that's going to enforce compliance with legislation. And how do we do it? And what does that mean? And how can we collaborate? That's more or less what we are going to discuss this morning. My name is Huub Jansen. I work for the Dutch Authority for Digital Infrastructure, and part of the team that's collaborating with the European Commission and UNESCO on a project. And I would like to give the floor first to Angelica, as leader of the project, to present us with the work they're doing.
Okay. Hello. Wait, I just have to. Okay. So we'll briefly present the project Supervising AI by Competent Authorities. So very, very pleased to present this very unique project, as you will see now. So a little bit of the background of the project. So this project is supported by the Technical Support Instrument, TSI, of the European Commission, DG Reform. The main beneficiary of the project is the Dutch Authority for Digital Infrastructure, RDI, and UNESCO is a knowledge partner of this project. The project also involves as stakeholders the Dutch and European working groups of competent authorities on AI. And the aim of this project is to enhance the capacity of RDI, so our project partner, to supervise AI in compliance with the AI Act, but also other relevant legislation and international standards, such as UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI. And it's important that we, highlight the fact that we work with RDI, but also RDI chairs two very important collectives. The first one is the Dutch Working Group of Competent Authorities on AI, and the second one is the European Working Group of Competent Authorities on AI, which regroups more or less 25 competent authorities throughout different member states of the European Union. These authorities range from data protection authorities to market surveillance authorities, so it's very varied, and it's a very interesting conversation and dynamics about learning how to supervise AI, and I will show you a little bit of that now. The objectives of the project are three. First, to provide knowledge and information on the state of play and good practices of AI supervision. Second, to increase the understanding about governance and technical expertise on specific issues that we will decide together with our project partners through training. And third, to provide recommendations to stakeholders on the potential value and impact of the different modalities of supervising AI. First, right now, we're in the first phase of the project, which we hope to finish by the end of the summer. What have we done? We have focused on research. We have conducted a survey to the members of the European AI Working Group of Competent Authorities on AI, and this is quite unique because as far as I know, no one has really engaged in this type of survey with all these important stakeholders in AI governance. Because they will be implementing the different legal frameworks that are being developed by the different governments and regions. Also, we have conducted interviews and workshops. And finally, we have broadened that initial survey that we had for the members of the working group to other supervisory authorities in the EU that are not necessarily part of this group. Now, I would like to present to you some data so you understand why this project is so relevant and is so unique also. And I will be saying this is very preliminary results, and So it's just some data points, not the whole picture. The whole picture will come later when we present the official report on the project. So as I said, in the context of the project, we had an online survey that was conducted between December 23 and May 24 to members of the European Working Group of Competent Authorities. The survey consisted of 5 sections: general questions, respondent mandate, supervision practices, feedback on the survey, temperature check survey. So this is just normal, normal survey sections. And the results, again, are preliminary, and I want to stress this point because we have added, there's been new members to the working group, so these persons have added a new survey, new input, so it's an ongoing process. Moreover, the dynamic nature of AI regulation presents supervisory authorities with many of us new issues that are unresolved, and this is important also to highlight, to give a little bit of context to the different answers that we received, because in December, for example, when they answered this, these first, questions, the AI Act, for example, was still ongoing on negotiation, so it's very important to have this context. The survey, so for example, one of the questions we asked, have you started to prepare for the supervision systems under the Act? It was very half-half. 50% said yes, or the other 50% said no. The survey obviously further asked for concrete examples of actions taken by their organization in preparing for the implementation of the AI Act, and also subsequently supervision of AI products. The survey also asked if there has been any training or exercises to enhance capacity building of these civil servants dealing with AI governance. And there were a lot of examples that were given, from having a webinar on AI to actually having capacity training properly. So it is really varied, and these results will obviously come in the report. To the question, do you think you will be prepared when the AI comes into effect in 2025? 42% said they will likely be ready, 33% said will not likely be ready, and 25% did not answer the question. And on the question, which existing competences need to be enhanced for your organization to implement the Act, most responded answered that it was legal and technical expertise. How do they define technical expertise, for example? And I put this as one of the comments of one of the respondents is to have theoretical machine learning methods and approaches and practical knowledge, infrastructure, machine learning stack of AI, auditing AI systems, standardization, certification, and market surveillance, and some field-specific AI knowledge like computer vision, etc., for personnel. So it's very also wide. To the question, do you currently supervise AI systems, whether in the scope or not of the AI Act? 66% said yes. So this is why it's also important that they have the right capacity. Oh, sorry, I don't know what to do. What do we do? So sorry about this. And then we...
Yeah, I think there's a technical issue. Okay. He's coming, the technician's coming.
Okay.
The technician is coming, 1 second.
So there was only one slide missing about the survey, in which we asked all the different, in which we also asked.
Now everybody's sure that it's live, right?
But this is just a slide before we go to our high-level speakers.
That's something.
Okay.
It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay.
This one. Yeah. And then finally, to conclude our preliminary results on the survey, and then I will follow up with more information, but we have our high-level speakers waiting for us, is that the survey also asked participants to rank which supervisory practice they feel more useful to learn about. And they were given the choice between AI audits, AI impact assessment, AI sandboxes, record keeping and incident reporting for AI systems, codes of conduct, and licensing of AI systems. And the most popular choice was licensing of AI systems and code of conduct. These were ranked, so obviously there's more data on how they perceive each of these categories and instruments that will be also developed in our report about AI supervisory practices. And I will now hand over to Hugh to finish, to start the high-level panel, because our speakers are waiting.
Yes, thank you very much. really great with the work what you're doing, but it's also just fun working together. So that's just as important. Okay, we move to the next part, the high-level panel with 3 guests. First, of course, Gabriela Ramos. The second is my Inspector General, Angelina van Dijk, and Nathalie Berger from the European Commission. Since I understand you have to leave in a minute, Nathalie, maybe I can ask you the first question. How can supervisory bodies effectively contribute to and support robust AI governance in this rapid changing legal landscape?
Thank you very much, Ruben. It's a great pleasure to have the possibility to be with you this morning and share a virtual, this time, panel or scene together with Gabriela and with Angelina. And I would like to thank Gabriela and UNESCO's Ethics of AI team for organizing this policy dialogue on artificial intelligence. And thank you very much for the invitation. Before diving into the answer, I would like to say a few words about how relevant this discussion is in the current context. As most of you will know it, the European Union has finally endorsed its long-awaited Artificial Intelligence Act, which will be published in the official journal of the European Union in a few weeks' time and will enter into force during the summer. I'm sure that you have heard these words before, but this will be the first comprehensive set of rules for artificial intelligence. And this has tremendous implications for supervisory authorities in the European Union, but around the world as well, and for AI governance in general, because the European Union is taking the lead and the European Union is really setting the standards. As technology advances at a rapid pace, the importance of strong artificial intelligence governance cannot be overstated. And the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, sorry, there is a dog barking, so maybe someone has a microphone that is open. So I was talking about the first legislation, the first regulatory framework on artificial intelligence, saying that we really cannot overstate the importance of strong artificial intelligence governance. This is something that the European Artificial Intelligence Act very clearly highlights. Supervisory authorities will play a crucial role in ensuring that artificial intelligence technologies are developed and used responsibly, safely, and ethically. For this, and to support a robust governance in the area of artificial intelligence, people, member states, governments, authorities will have to work on several aspects. For example, they will have to think about transparency and accountability. Supervisory authorities will have to implement practical measures like AI transparency registers, and they're likely to have other tasks around impact assessments, for example. And transparency registers will be mandatory for high-risk models in the European Union. But beyond obligations, we have already seen several authorities, like, for example, the cities of Amsterdam and Helsinki, setting them up to increase transparency and accountability. And the supervisory authorities can really strongly support this process. At national level, governments and authorities will also have to develop and use regulatory sandboxes. Regulatory sandboxes provide a controlled environment for testing the compliance of artificial intelligence solutions, but also for testing rules on artificial intelligence and for facilitating regulatory learning. Supervisory authorities have a crucial role to play by overseeing the process and providing guidance to artificial intelligence developers and deployers, and by facilitating dialogue between different stakeholders. Supervisory authorities also face many challenges in terms of both setting up the supervision and exercising their supervisory functions. As you mentioned it, Hub, in your question, there is a rapidly changing legal landscape. This has somehow changed, at least in the EU, with the adoption of the Act, which provides clarity for supervisors and developers. At the same time, the European Commission will also publish implementing acts that will strengthen the framework and facilitate its application and its enforcement. And this will be a lot for supervisors to take in. In this line, let's not forget about the rapid technological advancements that both increase the complexity of supervision and the degree of specialization that might be needed to understand these new technology products. There is also the question of skills and knowledge, which is always a moving target with such a fast-paced environment. But authorities must grapple with the needs to have both technical and specific knowledge that might be difficult to find, and interdisciplinary teams that will allow them to investigate a wider range of issues. So, in conclusion, supervisory authorities are instrumental for robust AI governance, but they need to be agile in their approach to secure resource commitments and investment in the necessary skills and knowledge. And throughout our technical support instrument project of DG Reform that Angelica just presented, we are attempting to contribute through not only the broader reflection on the governance of artificial intelligence, but also by building capacity for the supervisory authorities to be able to take on this challenge. And this is a work on which you in the Netherlands are leading, on which Angelina is doing fantastic work and fantastic progress. And we will be much looking forward to continue being informed of the progress of the work and see really the results in concrete. So we'll be very much looking forward to following the discussion. Personally, I apologize, I have to leave to join another meeting, but Thomas Giacoletto will continue being online and following the exchanges. Thank you so much, Hub. Thank you, Angelina. Thank you, Gabriela.
Thank you very much, Natalie. If you listen to it, I think we all feel, as competent authorities, even a heavier burden on all the pressure you put on us. But it's great. Thank you. So Angelina is the Inspector General from the Dutch Authority for Digital Infrastructure. And Angelina, I would like to ask you, given the necessity of effective operationalization and enforcement of an increasing volume of binding legislative and regulatory requirements on AI, how do you envision the roles and responsibilities of supervising authorities evolving to meet these obligations?
Well, thank you, Huub, and thank you, UNESCO, for this opportunity. I'm very happy of the role that UNESCO is taking in this global field of ethical AI. And we are also delighted with the fruitful and great collaboration with the AI ethics team of UNESCO. Good work, thank you. Within the RDI, we think that these developments will have a huge impact on the roles and responsibilities of supervisory authorities. And for my personal experience as an Inspector General of the Dutch Authority for Digital Infrastructure, I've already seen some fundamental changes of this. And like you said in the beginning, Huub, you started with some words that public attention with new technologies like AI and especially generative AI goes first, of course, with the political discussion and what is desired and what risks must be managed by legislation comes later. However, legislation alone is, of course, insufficient without compliance, and therefore supervisor authorities must stimulate and check and ultimately enforce compliance to ensure these regulations are effective. So that's my first answer to your question. I can say more, but maybe you also have other questions, Huub.
No, but please continue because we're in a short time lag. So please continue and then.
Okay, well, I think that the most important thing to say is that I see that AI is an integral part of products and services, and can only be supervised with the context of its use. So that's very important. And not all competent authorities have the necessary expertise and capacity to do this alone. So collaboration is key. Collaboration really, really is key. And no single authority can supervise the whole field of AI in isolation. So you see that there is a shift from domain specific to more combined legislation. Sector-specific supervision to a combination of sectoral and horizontal legislation. And this shift already begins with the personal data and cybersecurity legislation, for which we also are responsible. And it's now extending to AI. And the EU Act is not the first horizontal legislation we know, but therefore also new collaboration frameworks will be essential. And that is therefore it's so important that in this scene and with UNESCO, we discuss which legislation, but also what the supervisory authorities has to do. So it's that's the key. That collaboration and that journey we're in together. And I see that cybersecurity, for example, is often isolated from the rest of the product. And with AI supervision, it's different. It's really very different. So that's another observation, that that shift from domain specific to more the combined horizontal legislation is important. And despite legislation and standards, the main challenges for us as supervisors still remains how to supervise AI effectively. It's when I think about it, it's a very difficult question. As a competent authority, we actively working in this field, and but still navigating uncertainties. And that's why the support from UNESCO is so valuable in guiding us and other competent authorities in the EU. And of course, what Nathalie said, the EU Act will help us navigating through this complex landscape. But of course, it's not only the EU, it's also a question which is a theme, a global theme. And the evolution of supervisory authority roles and responsibilities it requires enhanced collaboration, interdisciplinary supervision, and ongoing international support. It's really a global theme. And and how to support and to meet new obligations of AI legislation effectively. Yeah, that's what we discuss in the UNESCO group, in that work stream, together with all 25 supervisory authorities. So that's very, very important work. And I'm looking forward to the report, to the, I don't know, I think it's coming next year, I hope, Gabriela, but maybe you can say something about that. I'm looking forward to that and to discuss what it really means for supervisory authorities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, Claude. So, just to wrap it up, so first, Angelica showed how much skills and knowledge competent authorities supervisory authorities are lacking at the moment. Then Nathalie said how crucial it is to have good competent authorities, good supervision, which is quite difficult. And then Angelina said AI is much more difficult than any other, which is of course normal because AI is in everything soon and how to supervise everything. So that means there's a lot of new things and new collaborations which are necessary. That for the difficult part. Now for the help. Gabriela, given UNESCO's global reach and engagement in the AI governance discussion, what role do you see for supervising authorities to play in that global landscape?
Well, thank you so much, and great to see you, Angelina and Nathalie. And I saw that you and Nathalie had the same dress code. You should have told me, because I should have also wear some nice flowers, but it's okay. Remember that we were the three launching that, and that was great. But I have to say that it has been said, first and foremost, for us, it's great to partner with DG Reform. I think this is one of the most innovative areas that the European Commission has, because it's very hands-on. It's about policy reform, and I think this is exactly what we are discussing now. The leadership of the Dutch authority, competent authority, but the digital, authority for digital infrastructure has been keen for this. And let me tell you that it's really walking the talk, because at the end, the discussion today is about how do we move from agreements, principle, decisions, Europe being the first to really go into legislating on AI, but that's just where you want to go. That's the compass where you want to go. Then you need the implementers. And I think that for those of us that have been, as I said, in the policy field, implementation is key. Implementation, implementation, implementation. And therefore, when you think about implementation, who is in charge? Who has the capacities? As we saw it with Angelica. And I don't know, but it's not that we brought Angelica from Colombia to be with Angelina from the Dutch, but at the end, the fact is, and actually it's led by 4 women, that's very interesting. But the fact is that we need to get into these questions very concretely, because if we think that AI is revolutionizing the world, the schools, our way of communicating, the job markets, is also challenging the institutions that used to be in charge of some technological transformations. And therefore, I think that what you're doing here and the leadership that the Netherlands have shown with the support of the European Commission, but also that we are very proud to be part of this discussion, is to get ahead of the game and think, okay, I have these institutions that have been delivering well for the certain purpose. What do we do when the purpose is changing? How do we reframe it? What are the functions that we need to keep? What are we in charge of? In a world where everybody is in charge of something related to AI, and therefore the responsibilities are dispersed. How do we learn to build these institutions? And I love that, because I believe that the institutions make the difference. in terms of delivering for what the laws and the regulations and the political decisions bring. So I feel that the supervisory authorities have a lot to do in addressing many of the risks, the challenges, the objectives of what we have been discussing the technological transition needs to be. Because you are the ones that are going to be there on the ground with the capabilities. Many times we are asking, do you have the mandates? Should the mandate be redefined? Do you have the skills of the people? We saw it. Should we bring different skills? I'm here with Elena Estavillo. We built up the IFETEL in Mexico, the regulator for telecom, and I was sitting with her looking at the profile of the commissioners, because we really needed to have even that, the definition of the people that is in charge. So we are learning a lot. But then something else, because we are UNESCO, of course, we are so proud to work with Europe in this initiative, but we also want to bring this knowledge to the rest of the world. And I think this is super important. Super important because it's not just translating what Europe is learning from these issues, because that doesn't work. Every country has its constitutional settings and ways of producing their own decision making. But the fact is that we are learning a lot. And one of the things that we hear in the international conversations is that we need interoperability, no? We need interoperability of the technologies. We need interoperability of the decision making of how to govern the technologies. And then we need interoperability of the institutions. And therefore, I think we're bringing something that has not been really discussed in the global landscape. No. And that's why I'm saying you're ahead of the game. And I'm so glad that you took us with you in being ahead of the game in this very important discussion. I'm gonna deliver the report to you and to Angelina in 1 minute to have a picture. And then I will leave the fantastic panel to discuss the more interesting parts of this conversation, because all of you are looking at these issues from the different regions that you represent. So maybe we take a picture of this, and then I skip nicely. Yeah. And okay. So I'm not, well, no, I do it like this.
Like whatever you like, but there's 2 documents and you hold it.
I'm destroying it. I have not delivered, and I'm destroying it. No, but let's do it like this. So I also give it to.
This is not like that.
So I also give it. Thank you, Angelica. So we give it like this to Hot, and then to Angelina. You can receive it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Three. Okay, bye-bye. I need to go now.
Just we maybe, because Natalie had to leave a bit earlier, we rearranged a little bit. There's still some of the presentation. There's still some of the presentation. Angelica hadn't finished, so she's going to finish, and then we move on to the panel discussion. So she's going to give us some context on the 2 reports that were just shown by Gabriela. If the technique is working. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. But it's really important that we give a little bit of context on these 2 documents, so it will be quite quick. I hope I don't speak in not too fast. So about the report. So this first report that ADG Gabriela Ramos just presented is the first deliverable of this project and aims to provide an overview of the international landscape of regulatory frameworks for the supervision of AI systems. We place a particular emphasis on examining those supervisory measures that have been formally codified into legal and regulatory frameworks across 20 jurisdictions. And this is also quite unique because there's a lot of research on policy documents or AI national strategies and soft law, but not really on binding law. So that's what we kind of focus of the focus of this report. So we have 20 jurisdictions across 5 regions. So Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, and North America have been included. And the selected jurisdictions are Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Chile, China, Costa Rica, EU, France, Germany, Japan, Norway, Mexico, Morocco, Peru, Singapore, Spain, Switzerland, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Moreover, This report intends to contribute to a better understanding of supervisory authorities in the context in which they will need to operate, as AG Ramos just explained. And the first part presents an overview of the AI landscape in the selected jurisdictions. As I said, particular focus on binding law. And the second part focuses on identifying and reviewing the commonalities and difference in the approaches in these jurisdictions to the extent they relate or they influence the task and mandates of supervisory authorities. This report is the first part of a more comprehensive report that will follow in fall 2024. And the second report will include the data of the survey, so more comprehensive than what I obviously showed you, just some initial preliminary results, and the interviews also that we carry on with different supervisory authorities throughout this period. And now I'm also pleased to also give some context on this first training material that you show and you have there. It's titled Enhancing Governance, Use Cases for Supervisory Authorities. So what it is about. This first training materials is a compilation of cases that examine potential AI failures, accidents, or negative impacts. So we aim that by providing cases, supervisory authorities that we'll discuss, they will enhance the reflexes to do risk assessment So we think that through case studies, we can promote systematic reflection on the variety of factors that can contribute to different levels of risk and the interplay also, and this is very important, of different legal requirements, which often they need to know how to handle. So you have different requirements from privacy law, from media law, from cybersecurity, and also from product market regulation. So all of these, how it interplays, and to help them think through it. We don't provide the answers. The idea is that this first training material will help them to start thinking on those factors. This material was piloted at the in-person meeting of the European Working Group of Competent Authorities on AI in Cyprus in May 2024. We had excellent responses from the authorities that attended that meeting and that, discussed these cases. And this led us to revisit them and, make them accessible to a broader audience. We now have 10 cases that covered a wide variety of AI applications, from health, law enforcement, education, critical infrastructure, to different levels of risk. So based on the EU Act categorization, so prohibited uses, high-risk cases, and limited risk cases. Now, this is what it looks on the inside. So you have, for example, a case which is called Wonder Lab, which is about a medical lab that implemented a virtual AI system named Wonder Doctor to help them write the dosage notices and marketing material for pharmacies and to determine the correct dosage for the new Wonder drug. And then, obviously, things don't go exactly as planned. So if you are a supervisory authority and you're confronted with this case, what do you think, what do you need to know? How do you think through it? How do you categorize this risk? So they will have, the report have a section of mandatory questions that help you think, so more general questions, and then also have additional questions for each of these cases depending on the field. So supervisory authorities will think about the interplay of different legislations. In this case, for example, is it a virtual assistant, a chatbot? Are there any legal obligations under the Act applicable to chatbot? Is there medical regulation applicable, the medical regulation device? There's a lot in there, and I think it's worth exploring, and I hope that all supervisory authorities will adopt it. We have had a great success with it so far. And then finally, we have a new website, and you can access through this QR code. The first part of the report on the global landscape of AI supervision and the training material will be published soon in this new project website. We will also feature interviews with supervisory authorities and content on AI supervision practice by experts. Nice, thank you so much. Now we can move on.
Thank you, Angelica. And now you see why we're so happy with the work she's doing. You can really show now what you're doing, so that's great. We're moving now on to the panel discussion. And let me first start by saying I started in 2020 on behalf of the Dutch Digital Authority, on Dutch Authority on Digital Infrastructure, to see how should we supervise AI. AI was upcoming already. We regulate the energy sector, cybersecurity, the telecom sector, and they were starting to use AI And is that okay or is it not okay? Is it safe, is it not safe? How should we supervise? That was the question where it started with. So we started with a team of people from all the different parts within our agency to collaborate on how are we going to tackle these topics. And there were some concrete cases that we needed to supervise during COVID, some things which were normally, when it comes to trust services, face-to-face, that wasn't possible, and they want to use AI, and is that acceptable? Then you need, as a competent authority, to say yes or no. So you can't say everything is uncertain, that doesn't work, you really need to have an opinion about it. So we just started to move in, even though we didn't know exactly where to go and how to do it. But in order to increase our knowledge, we said we're not going to do it alone, let's work together with other competent authorities within the Netherlands. So from education, healthcare, policing, data protection, we formed a group of competent authorities just to collaborate, even though that everybody was supervising completely different legislation, completely different products, completely different domains. It was still very useful because you all have the same kind of questions. How do I address it? What approach should I take? Do I need to be reactive, proactive? How can I be proactive? What legal instruments do I have? What kind of personnel do I need to get? How many personnel do I need to get? Can I collaborate with another one? Can we do a supervision together? All these kind of questions arose. So we started with a working group. In the beginning, we were a small group, and quite soon it were already about 25 competent authorities in the Netherlands collaborating. So that started since 2020. But we're all supervising European legislation. So in 2021, I started with a European working group of competent authorities because they have exactly the same questions that you need to tackle. So since 2021, we have the European working group of competent authorities. Well, that's where since last year, UNESCO and Angelica is always joining us, where the Commission joins as well, ENISA joins as well, because we're all in a kind of empty space which is not being taken on what I call the art of supervision. So from my responsibility, I took the opportunity to do this on a European level. But can you still do it on a European level? Is it useful to do it also, collaborate also on a global level? And then I come to this panel, because it could be, but it could not be. So I'm going to ask the panelists to see whether or not they think there should be some kind of global collaboration, or why should you collaborate on a global level? It should have a purpose. So what's the purpose that they think they have? And if there is a purpose for global collaboration, how could we organize it? There are a lot of different ways, and nobody knows what the best way is. So that's what this panel is about. Let me first introduce the panel to you. So we have Alexandra Schultz, an advisor from the Norway Digital Agency. We've got Alam Tabassi, Chief AI Advisor and Associate Director for Emerging Technologies from NIST. Welcome. You're the Asansi Salas from the Andorra Research Institute. Paloma Herrera, Advisor to the Ministry. Welcome, Ministry of Science. You're Lee Wan-si, the Director of Development of Data-Driven Tech in the Singapore Infocom Media Development Authority. Welcome. And we've got Elena Estavillo, founder of the think tank iCenter for Society and the Future. Wow. And former Commission for Telecom and Broadcasting. Alexandra, to start with you, what are your thoughts about the question, do we need global collaboration, and is it useful? But maybe first, you were in the working group in Cyprus, Angelica. How was that for you?
Thank you, and thank you so much for the invitation to join this panel and to join this discussion. I would say that I think that the meeting in Cyprus was incredibly useful for us. As Norway, we're outside of the EU, as we're in the EEA, so a lot of the discussions that happen in the EU, we are not necessarily privy to, but we will still have to adopt a lot of the same principles, so it was very useful to be part of that group. When it comes to your initial question, I think that, as has been said again and again today, AI is borderless. We lack competence, so having a global approach is absolutely incredibly useful and important. I will say that I think it's important to narrow down what we want to achieve with a global approach, because the disadvantage of a global approach is, of course, that it takes more time. It's a slower process than regional approaches. We already have a lot of infrastructure and systems in place to collaborate with our neighboring country and our own regions. I think it's interesting to maybe look at how we want to approach risks in terms of regional and global. The World Economic Forum recently published a report where they stated that they believe that the risk of AI to the world in the next couple of years is fairly low, but in the next 10 years is very high. And I think this is where a global approach is very useful for this long term, these bigger existential systematic questions. And maybe we need more of a regional, iterative, adaptive, fast approach for these short term questions.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting division that you make for between long-term, short-term, long-term. Elam, maybe you can shed some light on this topic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for including me in this important panel and this important discussion. So I think I agree. I think everybody agrees that we do need some sort of a global conversations around this. I won't repeat a lot of really good things that was mentioned already, but I think, and it's really great to see that there is many different activities at the regional level, attempts at the global level, and these are all really important. I think the question then becomes that if you want to go for global coordination, who does what, and again get a better understanding of all the players that are. All the players in the space right now. I really liked what Anne said this morning, and I want to repeat that it's important to just get a stockpile of who is doing what, and then based on that, try to do some sort of a gap analysis, some sort of understanding the needs, and then figure out who are the most competent to address those needs. And one other thing coming from a measurement agency, I think it's also important in all of these things that we do, we root all of our conversations in science and make sure that we have generate empirical evidence and empirical data, and let the science and empirical data leads us to the answers. Thank you.
Jordi, can you please think, do you think it's useful, and why would it be useful?
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Hope. And bonjour, and for the sake of language diversity, bon dia. I think it's useful, and our case is kind of a special in the sense that ADG Ramos said yesterday that the RAM, the readiness assessment methodology that was starting to be applied in India and gathering 1.8 billion people into that. We'll try to do that with 85,000 people. That is the size of our country. So you can see the differences here between the diversity of member states, countries around the world, but also small communities. I think that even though we know that there are differences between these different states, different communities, we can build based on these differences. Just today, I heard many interesting cases from Mauritius that could be similar to our case because it's a small state, but also from Slovenia, but also talking with the colleagues here and around, even some of the information that I use to advise my government is based on NIST, for instance. So I think that if we use these differences as a collective intelligence, I think that we are in a position that we can share many of different inputs that could be useful. We have a common conversation, let's put it that way. But this, I think it's a way to build capacity. So in that sense, sometimes just, having a common knowledge base of information it could be useful. So I think it's super important to exchange, and I think that maybe just following what Alexander was saying, it's what's the main topic, you know, the common baseline. To me, will be probably minimum standards, common standards, homogeneous standards, but also, and I think that this was the Minister of Slovenia said that it's language standards. So because we need to use the same language across all the countries. So I think that just putting that into the top of the table, it will be kind of interesting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So you plead for a special role for the small communities because they have different needs than the big countries.
Yes, indeed, and I think that I'm not making a plea here for the specific case of Andorra. It's not that case.
No, but
it's more about small communities.
Yeah.
Small communities that are inside big countries too, because the case for, I was making the joke about the, speaking in Catalan, but it's the same situation for Quechua, for Aymara, Wolof, and other minority languages. So the common problem is the same, and these are based on, working on these differences as a common thing that we are, you can go together, work together.
And apparently you lean very much on Ellen or the standards from NIST.
Why not? They're doing a great job.
Yeah.
So I'm reading lots of documentation because when you have so few resources, it's important to take into account what are the other resources that we have. UNESCO's ones are super interesting too. The Council of Europe ones are super interesting too. So, yeah.
No, I just want to thank you for your comment, and also say that everything that we do at NIST really is the work with the whole community. Working with the community and the input from the community is really important. So thank you very much to all of you for helping us making documents. That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Well, then maybe you've got some experience in organizing a large community, so we could use your help as well. I'd like to move to Paloma. Can you share some light on your views?
Okay, thank you. I'm from Chile and a legal advisor of the Ministry of Science and Technology. And in our view, technology is global because it transcended borders. So thinking about local governance is insufficient. It is not effective to regulate in one place without considering how it is regulated elsewhere, as technology is interconnected and its influence extends globally. AI, the internet, and other advanced technologies are present in almost all aspects of modern life, from economy to education and health system, meaning that any isolated local regulations can be quickly surprised by the global dynamics of technology. So we are not only dealing with the prevention, harm, and risk, but also ensuring human-centered AI. We must ensure some degree of participation and address technological development inequalities between different countries so that this technology does not accelerate inequalities. Since these technologies are developed by multinational companies larger and richer than entire countries, any local governance or regulations effort will be impossible or unmanageable without the collaboration of the private sector. These considerations are crucial for both governance and implementation. And in this context, this year, the Ministry of Science, Technology, Knowledge, and Innovation of Chile is a large name, led by Minister Elena Estavillo, launched an update to the national AI policy and present an AI bill following UNESCO's recommendations. And the AI bill from the ministry aims to promote the creation, development, innovation, and implementation of human-centered AI systems and ensure the protection of health, safety, and fundamental rights of individuals. The bill proposed an intersection between self-regulation and risk-based regulation focused on human centers, classifying AI systems into those that present an unacceptable risk. And in this way, efforts are encouraged for other nations taking similar paths to have guidelines to follow, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean, as this region face similar realities and challenges. For this reason, regional collaboration is essential to overcome common problems such as inequality, lack of access to technology, and the need to strengthen local capacities to make the most of the opportunity that artificial intelligence provides. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I've been writing a lot down there of all the things that you said. I'll get back to that later. First, I would like to ask you to give your insight from Indonesia.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm Wan Si from Singapore. I'm responsible for AI governance policy for Singapore. So I guess the question is, how should we cooperate globally? I think there are many ways. I thought it's useful to double click a little bit.
So you agree it's necessary?
Of course.
And why?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for repeating the question.
Because that might help us focus on how to organize it if you know what the goal is for collaboration.
Understand, yeah. Like my colleague here from Andorra, I think we're also a small country, so it's absolutely important. Of course, 85,000, 5 million, not the same level, sorry, but we recognize that it's also important that we cooperate globally. That's really important because I don't think we all have within ourselves the capacity to do all of that, right? So international cooperation is important. I wanted to double click a little bit on what we mean by international cooperation, right? It's interoperability of regulations, of standards. So what do we mean by that? And how do you actually practically make it happen? So Elham and I had these conversations a couple of years ago already about the AIR math, right, in the States, and then what we have in Singapore, AIR Verify. And then we said, hey, what does it look like if we put the two side by side and see how, where are our differences and where are our similarities? And that mapping exercise is really important because it's the first step towards understanding each other. So that's one. And secondly, I think the other way in which we could cooperate is really look at it from a technical perspective. So it's not just talking, generalities, but getting into the weeds of it. And what do we mean by technical cooperation? It could be working with one another to understand the issues with regards to AI, technically, but also in regards to testing. So we have the AI Safety Institutes, but that feels like a very high bar. But actually on the supervisory side, at the policy side, we can already start getting into the details in terms of thinking about technology. So we came up with a technical testing framework, toolkit, as a first way to sort of put it out there and have that conversation with people. And we're happy that actually the Dutch government is using that technical testing toolkit as well. So thank you very much for just trying to understand how that could be helpful, right? The third area in which we could really work together is, as Alessandra said, starting with our region, starting with people, with communities that are very similar to us, and start forming that clarity in what we mean by AI governance, what we mean by regulations. And so in Singapore, we work with our colleagues from Thailand. Hi, they're here in the room today, as well as Indonesia. I think he was here and left. Other countries in Southeast Asia, and we came up with what is our point of view collectively. And that's really important, right? And we're also starting work with other, small states, small countries, to then look at what are the challenges that small countries face, and then what would that AI governance playbook look like? So that's something that we're doing with Rwanda. So these are very practical ways in which we can get started on international collaboration. Thanks.
Thank you very much. A lot of food for thought. I'll come back to that in a minute. Elena.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to the panel. And yes, I have to agree. Of course, we need global collaboration and also different stances of regional collaboration because different countries have things in common with other countries. So we I believe that we need a global collaboration, but also to find those spaces for regional specific. For example, from the viewpoint of Mexico, it makes a lot of sense to have collaboration on the Latin American and the Caribbean region because we share common challenges. We're in situations that have many things in common, and also because of the importance of bringing our cultures, our languages into AI. And in Latin America, Spanish, Portuguese, but also we have many indigenous languages that are not represented. And this is a common interest, just to collaborate regionally and then to collaborate globally because of other interests, because of markets reach. That is a fact, that markets go beyond national boundaries, and we have their limits for jurisdiction. We can define very good laws and regulations, but then jurisdictions will limit our capabilities to supervise and to enforce. So we need lots of collaboration, and in some stances, it's more visible than others. For example, in competition related to the sector, and on data governance also, so we need lots of collaboration in these different instances.
Thank you very much. If you have a question, Robert.
No, I'm really happy that you asked me about this. What I found is very important. You speak. Every one of you speak about the international collaboration, very deep domain collaboration, on very granular level. This is very important. What I got it, and so thank you for that discussion. But our work of experts of UNESCO, European Union, UN nations, WIPO, and other organizations, till to this moment was to deliver one interoperability among the organizations. And what you got that work for the table, and thank you for that, that now we can precisely can focus on this topic, how to govern the interoperability further.
Yes, thank you. I see that as a compliment and that we need to move on. Thank you very much, Elena, because you mentioned, I didn't make it explicit. When it comes to competent authority, you're very limited to the laws and the legislation that you have, the jurisdiction. So as soon as something happens on a wider field, regionally or globally, you need to collaborate. So that's one reason why, as competent authorities, you need to be able to at least know which other competent authorities you should reach or connect with as soon as there's, for example, a major incident. So we need at least some way of collaboration in order to find other competent authorities if there is an incident or if there's a certain use case that you need to take. What I heard from many of the panel members is start regional. A bit like we did within Europe, we started regional because that's culturally, language, no, not language, not culture. But anyway, geographically, we're the same and within the European Union, European Economic Area. So that's the reason why we collaborate, because of the same legal framework. And I think Latin America and the Caribbean would be a very good use case as well. But at the same time, you mentioned global collaboration slows you down, costs money, costs energy, and we don't have that a lot because we have a lot of work to do as a competent authority. So there should be a balance on what should you do and how should we do it. And at the same time, even if you start regional, there are some different topics like smaller countries have a specific role. So I have the feeling, and I would like to see how the panel reacts to that, that we need to find some kind of flexible networking system, maybe of regional approaches, regional collaborations, and then a combination of the chairs of the different one, but maybe also some based on topics like the small countries, or maybe there's a group of companies worldwide, competent authorities worldwide that want to focus more on sustainability or on small languages or whatever. So I think we need a kind of flexible, agile, that's what Natalie Berger mentioned, a form of collaboration. Ellen, can I have your views on that?
So when we talk about, I think what you're suggesting is sort of a hybrid approach. And when we talk about standards and we talk about a lot of the work that we do, we also think about a hybrid approach. And what I want to say is that I think I hear and understand the importance of the regional, smaller community needs, and it's really important to reflect that. But across the globe, and I think you mentioned that on the having an interoperable vocabulary. So we heard about transparency is important, but are we all defining transparency in the same way? Even terms such as risk and bias, right? You know, the way we define risk in AI RMF and the way it's being defined in EU AI Act are a little bit different. So even these very simple words that we think we know, or we have the same understanding of that, it's really important to start talking about those and have a shared understanding on all of those things. That can become some sort of a foundations for global interoperability. I think it's the hazards that I see is that the regional or smaller conversations start going on, but based on different interpretation of the same term, and then it becomes difficult to bring them all back together.
But to what extent do you think that's a role for competent authorities, or is it more for organizations like yourself on standardization?
I'll let my other panelists answer that. I should just say that this is a non-regulatory agency, so we don't take any positions on the regulations. We are a measurement science and standard, but yeah. We are not anti-regulations or agnostic to regulations. So, yeah.
Alexandra.
Yes, I would just agree, first of all, with what Elam said. I think also a hybrid approach is a very useful way to do it. I also think that it'll be absolutely integral to have an iterative approach to how we supervise and how we regulate. I think we need to, as the representative from Mila said earlier, we have to have the courage to start doing things, take initiative, but we also have to have the humility to see our errors, to iterate, to go back, walk things back, change our processes, etc. I think when it comes to who gets to define transparency or who gets to close the gap between regulation and how we do it in practice, if that's the competent authorities or these organizations, it's a very good question. And I think that the boring answer is probably that's an interplay between both, that none of them can do it alone. We're reliant on each other. I think the strength of the competent authorities is that they're very close to the action. They talk to the developers. They're close to the landscape. They can define the issues. They see what's going on very closely. The strength of the organization is that they have incredible competence. They can reflect maybe a bit more. So I think it'll be an interplay between these organs.
Jordi.
Well, I do agree with Alexandra and Elham. Just to give you a small example about this common language, I also am at the Council of Europe at the Committee of AI, and we decided that we will follow some of the definitions that have been done in the OECD. So because they're good. So it's just a question of reusing information about the standards or the languages that we are using all together. So I know that sometimes it will be difficult to define transparency. I'm an engineer. So transparency is something difficult, explainability, this is even more difficult, but we need to bridge this gap. And I think that the definition of, for instance, explainability, it shouldn't be a technical explanation. I'm an engineer, okay? So, and I'm saying that, and I know that many people from the, from the professional group will say, man, you're crazy. But there is, because we're talking about different types of people. We're talking with regulators that speak the language of law. We speak about, social, people from the NGOs, and we need to have a common understanding of this common language, because otherwise I have my own definition of explainability that could be very different from from the judge's perspective, from the law perspective, from the regulator perspective. So I do agree with Alexandra that maybe it's an interplay between different, languages. And just to add one thing, language is important, but also the narratives, because the narrative that we are hearing right now is that regulation hinders innovation. And this is a common thing that comes from a specific place. So probably one of the roles that we should have is also to change some kind of narratives. And I'm not saying that for the last news from this week about companies saying that we will not come to Europe because some regulation, some GDPR problems. So.
Yeah, thank you. I had that already on my paper as well, to talk about the balance between innovation and regulation and enforcement, which I personally think it's not against each other. I'm from the telecom supervisor, and there often you see new standards combined with legislation, combined with enforcement is usually speed up innovation. But it depends a bit on how you supervise whether or not you give, because you always need to find a balance between restrict enforcement to make sure people are not harmed, and at the same time space for innovation. So I think that's one of the topics I would like to talk on a global level, as well as competent authorities, to see how can we find a balance, and can we find a balance on a global level, because I think that would work for everybody. So thank you for touching. Lee Wansi.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I just wanted to add on to what Jordi, Alexandra, and Elham said. I agree absolutely. I thought maybe I just, two things. So the first is, we know that AI is also how AI is used is also important. So where the sector regulators come in, that means in financial services, in healthcare, and so on, is also important. And just to complicate matters, then when you talk about common languages, then we probably have to also bring in the sector regulators as well. That means the other competent authorities in other sectors, right? So that we all understand what we mean when we say transparency and explainability and so on in this context. I think the other thing that I could add also to the international kind of conversation is, you mentioned OECD definitions. So it's the same thing that we do, right? We participate in OECD. We think it's a helpful way to have common definitions. And we use that definition in the other communities that we get involved in. So we use the same definition in ASEAN so that it's consistent. And in this way, you're then bridging different communities from OECD and from ASEAN, which is Southeast Asia. And we can continue to do that as we are sort of in the intersection of different sort of groupings and communities. And I think that's one way in which we can drive towards common understanding and interoperability.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you touch also on a different issue. Even if you want to work globally, you can't work together in every country. Like in the Netherlands, there are 25 competent authorities that are affected by AI. And then there are 27 European member states, times 25, or times 193. And then you have only one person from one competent authority collaborate. I mean, that's not possible. So that will really raise the question of how do you do it? Because when it's about medical devices, it's completely different than when it comes on the use of AI for policing or whatever. And so that's also something we need to think of how we're going to approach that. You have an opinion?
Yeah, if I can quickly add to that, yes, there are differences in the verticals, in examples that you said, AI in healthcare or finance or policing, but I think it's a benefit for the whole community if, for example, terms such as bias, the core definitions is the same across all of those, because then when we have those definitions that are across the same across, gives us clarity about what to measure, so we can move on to the more important questions of how to measure, and those measurements, those tests and evaluations becomes the backbone of any enforcement of any of the laws and policy and regulations. Policy and regulations usually stay at the high level, abstract level, that's saying that the AI systems must be non-discriminatory, safe, secure, but they don't get into those definitions. And if we don't have those definitions, then we cannot get to the question of how to measure them. And if we cannot measure them, we cannot really have a good assurances for enforcement of those policies. So And one way of doing this is also, as the policymakers are having this conversation, which is really important, make sure that the technical community and scientific community and engineers also participate and contribute to that, while also bringing the community that study the impact of the technology, so that we have definitions and understanding of these terms that works across the different sectors, but also across the different disciplines.
Yes, thank you. I do think this is what we should try to reach, and at the same time, we have to be realistic that I don't think it's going to work in the beginning. For example, within the AI Act, question. Yeah, sorry.
So I appreciate, well, first of all, great panel. I appreciate, of course, the sentiment that we could all know what something was and measure it. But I've seen a lot of people waste a lot of time trying to hammer down definitions, of course, too. But more importantly, I kind of feel like anytime you have total agreement on one thing, that, well, we have something, there's a law in social science. As soon as you have defined something, then everybody starts gaming that metric. So I wonder if this might be one of those cases where if you get local consensus, and again, like having multiple jurisdictions, it's a good idea to have maybe a few definitions and have different regions kind of going and pursuing slightly different definitions. If that may actually build more robust and more resilient governance.
Yes, thank you. And immediately another question? Yes.
Yeah, adding to that, my name is Estavillo. I represent the BTEC project at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva. And I also want to reemphasize 2 points that came up on this very fascinating panel, in particular the points made by the delegate from Chile, but also the representative from NIST. And it's really the role of the impacts on rights holders and also the role of the private sector, since we are talking about huge AI companies that are operating across jurisdictions, as many of the panelists pointed out. And it's a very complex task to enforce regulation in a rights-respecting and effective manner. And that's why it's so important that we re-emphasize the role of international standards, namely process-oriented due diligence standards that the OECD and also the UN has developed. The OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises on responsible business conduct, where the OECD AI group of experts is currently developing a draft AI due diligence guidance, as well as the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, which the BTEC project breaks down to the technology sector, and we have published guidance also on AI, generative AI. And the core task at the moment is really that the risk assessment and mitigation measures that the companies apply in practice that we need in order to protect the rights holders, they differ so strongly, and the tech innovation really leapfrogs and outpaces a lot of these risk assessment practices. And if we do not align with the international standards, we cannot create this level playing field that the regulator also needs in order to enforce effectively. So I just wanted to also congratulate UNESCO on convening us and also bringing in just the important role also happening in different fora, and I hope that we can combine this, and that many people who had also been at the OECD in the previous days. So just putting this out here. And very important also the point that Elham stressed in terms of vertical versus horizontal differences. Of course, these process-oriented due diligence standards talk more to the horizontal processes, and then it's fantastic to have these experts in the room that can then bring the vertical implications in there, and that also relates to the comment from the previous speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I totally agree, but at the same time, if you look at the challenges put on competent authorities, to include everything, almost. So I totally agree, and at the same time, it's a process we're all in. As I said, as a competent authorities, we sometimes already need to say okay or not okay, even though there aren't any standards, there isn't any uniform. You just need to act as a competent authority. So we're, in a way, fortunately, we're used to driving in the mist and making a decision. And it can go wrong or right, and then the judge will decide whether or not. Let me go to Paloma. Do you have something to add to all the discussions?
Yes, thank you. How can I organize it? We believe that supervisory bodies should play a crucial role in facilitating and overseeing a coordinated global governance approach. These bodies should act as intermediaries, providing technical guidelines for fostering international collaboration, and ensuring the effective implementation of agreed policies. A clear example is the approach taken by the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, IPCC, whose mission is to provide the world with an objective and scientific view of climate change, its natural, political and economic impacts and risks, and possible response options. And in this way, it has provided guidelines and technical support for decision making at the conference of the parties, COP by countries, okay? And in the context of global AI governance, it's crucial to adopt an approach similar to that of the IPCC. AI presents enormous opportunity, but also poses risk and challenge that must be managed in a coordinated manner globally. A supervisory body in the field of AI could play a similar role, providing technical and scientific guidelines for fostering international collaboration and ensuring that policies are effective and evidence-based. This is an idea.
Great. I never thought of it, but look at the IPCC. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, just a short intervention, and then we go to Elena.
So there's been a big debate about whether the IPCC, which looks at the natural world, is a better model than the IAEA, which talks about another technology. And I'm just wondering if the reason why we keep talking about IPCC is because certain countries don't want there to be inspectors.
Yeah. That's a good remark. Thank you. Elena.
Yes, I wanted to, just to react a little bit about how it is difficult to agree on definitions. And in these issues, it's more difficult because definitions keep changing, because of technical innovation pace. So yes, we have to act even without having these common grounds on definitions. And this is rather new and a big challenge for authorities, because authorities are not used to act like that, with such a big part of the picture that isn't defined. But maybe something that can help a little bit is just to make a difference in the what's and the how's. Because it's easier to agree on the what, on the objectives, on the principles, and then the how to manage, to attain that, or then it can be left for a more flexible approach, and that on the specific authorities that have to enforce or decide on a specific issue. And also that can help into this big group of authorities, of competent authorities that can exist inside countries and in the global sphere. Because we have this, if we can say, like the general authorities, and then the specific authorities. And to take the example of transparency, we can have a definition of transparency, but it will look very different to apply it in transportation sector or in the health sector. But if we have some agreement on the what, then we can leave those decisions on how to apply to enforce that principle in specific cases.
Thank thank you. That's, I think, a very good way to approach it, because it makes it more flexible and easy to find your common ground, and then in the end you can decide on differences in every member state or every country to do it in a different way. One of the things that came to my mind is there are a lot of standards and guidelines and whatever, but in the end, as a competent authority, you're just going to supervise your law, regardless of what is said. And so if guidelines are not, they're not always consistent with legislation, and as a competent authority, you're just going to look at your local law that you need to enforce. And at the same time, it's the question, can you do it? So, for example, if I take the AI Act, it says that we should, as competent authorities, should check that it's not discriminating. But at the same time, when it comes, for example, to medical devices, the medical device regulation says it must be scientifically based, the medical devices. There must be scientific knowledge that it's really improving healthcare. But for the last 300-400 years, it's been white male-dominated science. So how can we, as a competent authority, supervise whether or not it's discriminating? Because it probably is, but it can't mean that everything stops. So it's quite a challenge for competent authorities to really do it. So that's a major issue. At the same time, as competent authorities, we usually look at risk. We often have a risk-based approach. So you usually focus at the biggest risks. So you look at, so that means that a lot of things you don't know or are limited, impacted, you can leave and you focus on the major issues. And that's a way we need to balance as competent authorities, especially in this time and age when it's going so fast that it's sometimes difficult to find the path you're going. That's what came to mind, and I'm referring it to a question. What advice would you have for a competent authority? Alan? Sorry, you weren't prepared on this question.
That's okay. Right. A lot, going back to the some of the questions about the definitions, because that's how I want to answer that. I think it's really important to have clarity on the goals and the purpose. So that's where understanding each of the terms that's being used becomes really important. So I guess my advice becomes understand the purpose, understand objective, make sure that all of these, if there are, you talked about non-discriminatory, what do we mean by non-discriminatory? And to me, it ought to be broader than just demographic disparity and allocations of the error rate across the different demographics, but it should also include systemic biases, the differences that has been and biases that has been baked into the norms and processes and in the society, but also cognitive bias. So that was just one example to say that we use.
Do you want to use AI to improve all the things that have gone wrong when it comes to, okay.
So I think when you talk about risk, I think it's really important, first of and foremost is, again, it goes back to the definition. The way we define it in AIRMF, it's a probability of an event, consequences of that event. Consequence can be positive, negative, or neutral. That means that risk management is about maximizing benefits while minimizing the risks. So it becomes understanding of context of use, who is being impacted, by what, by how much, so what are the risks are involved, so the mapping of the risks, understanding the condition of the use, the environment of the use, and then also have understanding of how to measure those risks. So bring all of these knowledges together to be able to do that risk management. So we are a big fan of the risk-based approaches, as you said, and the risk-based approaches at the end gets to these 4 activities of governance, having a process and norms and policy and procedures so that allows for effective risk management, mapping the risks, understanding the context, understanding the different risks involved, having an ability to measure them quantitatively, qualitatively, mixed method, and use all of those knowledge to do the risk management. And then also build the right resources, and that's the capacity and talent to be able to do that.
Thank you. A question from the audience.
Yes, thank you very much. I represent my state, Argentina, at UNESCO, and we have listened a lot about cooperation. We know that the artificial intelligence is a fact. The evolution is too quick. But I think that we are applying here all tools. We are thinking that the world stopped some years ago, and we continue trying to find solutions to a new thing. The acceleration of history is a fact too. And for example, I asked myself, and I think that if you have the answer, I will be very glad, but how we will incentive the dialogue between the authorities, we are talking about authorities now, and the private sector. We know and we agree that it's not only economy, but the major subject for some sectors are the economic tools. And how we will do to incentive the dialogue, how we will do to create cooperation between states and collaboration with the private sector, because it's beyond the states, and we don't have the capacity to do that, and especially some regions of the world. And the thing is, do you think that we need a convention, an international convention about artificial intelligence to deal with these ethic subjects? And if we will do that, do you think that it will respect this convention? Because we are looking every day, we are watching, we are seeing that it's not, we don't comply with the rules that we have now. What if we will do something similar in the future? Well, it's a question I hope to have some guide here, but I think that we will need to talk during a long time to find the real solution. Thank you.
Yeah, the question online now. Just a short answer, and then we go to the question online from, I think it's Theo. Can't really read it. I think you're right, but at the same time, what I'm happy about is that globally, everybody understands the risks of AI, especially now generative AI. So at least everybody is aware. And what I hope is that you see now a lot of summits and events and whatever on a global level to try to get some kind of legislation globally, and hopefully some kind of uniform, similar legislation. If we have a lot of standards and if competent authorities can collaborate, then I do think we can make we're counterfeiting power. Because as you said, if you look at the amount of money that goes into it, it's huge. It's in a magnitude that has never been seen before. That means that on the other side, when it comes to regulating and enforcing, we need to do something similar. And that means, I think, on a global level. So to my knowledge, on collaboration on a global level on such a broad topic between competent authorities, we've never seen before. But I think it's necessary as part of the global governance on making sure it's AI for good and not for bad. It's not an answer, but I hope together we can do it. Then I move on to the online. Yeah, online. Yes, please.
I don't know, should I read it? Otherwise you have it.
So who do you think first?
I would take the first question. I will just read it to you because, so it's in French. It says, est-il possible de créer un réseau d'autorités compétentes pour échanger les bonnes pratiques sous la houlette de l'UNESCO? So is it possible to create a network of competent authorities to exchange on good practices under the patronage of UNESCO or something like that? So that's an excellent question for the panelists.
It's more a question for you. Are you going to do it? Yes, please.
And well, as long as the second one is, Regulation is very important when it comes to AI policy. There are already many examples of AI models potentially incorporating copyrighted intellectual property without permission from these copyright holders. With these issues currently forming new legal standards in countries worldwide, how do we strike the right balance when making recommendations to strike a balance between AI regulation and freedom?
And balance between AI and freedom. I don't have an answer for that. Were those the questions online? Okay, then we have one in the back of the room. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm Louise Riandel. I'm the co-secretary to the Committee on Artificial Intelligence at the Council of Europe. I just wanted to respond to Argentina, who was asking for a convention on AI. We actually do have a convention on AI, which is global, because it's open to non-Council of Europe member states also, which was adopted by the Committee of Ministers. We have representative from the CAI in the room, so I just wanted to say there is a legally binding treaty on AI, and it's open for signature on the 5th of September of this year. So just wanted to jump on the occasion.
And do you think, because that was, is that sufficient to keep the big tech companies in line with legislation?
Well, international law does not, the clients of international law are obviously not the tech companies or the private sector. And it is a framework convention on AI, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. So this is not exactly the point. The point of the convention is to set global rules and principles for everyone, and it's for the states who will sign and ratify the convention to abide by those rules. But I think it's a first standard that is here and that has the merit of existing, and that to bring together a number of actors. As I said before, it's a global convention. We had the 46 members of the Council of Europe participating in the negotiations, but also 11 other observer states and non-member states, including Canada, the US, Japan, countries from South America as well. So I think we need global rules that everyone can agree on and then work into more specific sectors.
And do you, just an additional question, do you, is it being enforced from the Council of Europe? Is that on a national level that competent authorities need to enforce it, or is it not going to be enforced? Because it's legally binding, you said. Yes,
so states sign and ratify conventions, and then they have to apply the conventions and the rules that they are deciding to be binded by.
Okay, just to make sure I understand, because I think, okay, there's another role for a supervising authority. It's already quite busy. Does that mean, yeah, I get to you in a minute. If I understand correctly, so it's legally binding on a national level. So the countries that need to implement it in local legislation, country-wise legislation, and then they need to organize whether or not it's going to be supervised, right? Okay, thank you for the clarification. Yes.
Hi, I'm Nico Miai, the founder and chair of the board of the Future Society and CEO of Prismiva. I have one more question for the Council of Europe, building on what you said, and elaboration on the question before, is how is the convention, how is the monitoring mechanism of the convention going to be designed? One of the great things that brings us together over the past 2 days is that UNESCO's recommendation on ethics has been supplemented by a monitoring mechanism, including a readiness assessment methodology and an impact assessment tool to precisely keep a gentle pressure on and support on the government so that, and to help them implement that. So question, the Council of Europe has been an excellent monitoring mechanism agency, so what are they thinking about that? And the question I wanted to ask, building upon the digital question, is network to share best practices between supervisory authority is very important, but I think it needs to go, and it's difficult to go one notch beyond. In many cases, when there are cases that they're suing actors in the economy, they are prevented from sharing information. So in some jurisdictions, their ability to coordinate around cases is difficult. And in most cases, these agencies suffer from, let's say, asymmetry of information, if not asymmetry of power. So how could we move to a point where these agencies could not only share best practices, but actually share information about the cases vis-a-vis competition, vis-a-vis privacy, vis-a-vis many other things that they are confronting in their own jurisdiction? Thank you.
Thank you to the practical work of competent authorities. So that's a daily question that we have. So yes, this is an issue. For example, when it comes to within the Netherlands, when it comes to implementing the AI, this is one of the major topics that we need to see organized legally, that we are able as different competent authorities to share information when there is an incident or when there is a use case that you really need to enforce, but also on a European level we need it. So this is something serious because of the asymmetry of information that you have. So very important topic. Yeah. Yeah. And then we move to the Theo Andersen online.
Yeah, so only a quick mention, because there are bilateral agreements between competition authorities in different countries. So that might be some imperfected model, but there are some cases where competition authorities might share information on a case that is being persecuted by both authorities. Now, and this would be a situation that is that has that same challenge.
Thank you. We move to one online comment from Theo Andersen, and then we do a last wrap up.
Theo, can you please put on your camera?
In between, Robert wants to say something while we wait for Theo.
Yeah, if I can thank you for the possibility of voice. Relating to the, thank you, Luis, for mentioning the new treaty.
You need to talk in the microphone.
Yes, thank you for Luis for mentioning the Treaty of Council of Europe. It's hard work, but what we have a challenge. Any country can ratify it by our society, community of AI experts, are in the position to call national countries as countries to ratify, because in the treaty you have an option out, and from the base of that option, some private sector could be outside. If you would like to have in the loop private sector, what is very good aim, because the future existence belongs to the digital sphere defined by digital companies. If you would like to do this, that is really this is a real action. The call for government to ratify that first treaty. But if not, we have another chance on the UN level. The conversation about the governance of AI started, and this is also good community to define the new expectation of the treaty. And finally, referring to your position, very great point. Everything, it's not about the skills and even bias. It's about the dealing of asymmetry of assets and access to everything, to the talents, to the markets, to even the right to life. Even that. I can develop the topic about the AI versus freedom. Why we regulate AI? Because we probably, some of us would like to protect the freedom of anything. And regulating AI, we can also boost innovation. This is the good aim for regulation, not only to protect.
Yeah, thank you. And we can take that topic during lunch as well, because it's, and like you said, also on UN level after the Council of Europe, but still I hope when they're working on the text for that kind of regulation, they look whether or not it's possible for competent authorities to supervise it. Because not everything in laws is supervisable, so it's nice as a political document, but it's useless in reality, in my opinion, as competent authority. We move to Theo Andersen. Are you there? Oh, can you unmute him?
I asked him to unmute, but nothing happened so far.
Theo is
Yeah. He wants his freedom. Okay. Yeah. Okay, then maybe if he's online, just let me know, and else I would like to do a wrap-up and just ask everybody if you have some final comments, ideas, suggestions, anything you wanted to say and haven't said until now. Liwa.
I guess I can start. Just responding to the gentleman from Argentina. So I think it can be very overwhelming if you see that there's a lot to do and it's hard to do. So I think just speaking to all the policymakers out there, I think it's just start with something, take some actions, be practical, and you start building that competency and building that capability. I think you just have to start somewhere to get going. And so I thought maybe I'll just take a quote that was recently made in a speech about regulating AI. And he borrowed from Bismarck's quote. So he said, regulating AI must be the art of the possible, the art of the attainable, and the art of the next best. Because if you want to hope for perfection, you'll never be able to get anything done. So let's just try and do some practical steps together. Thank you.
Just going back also to our Argentinian colleague here, because it's a very relevant point, but I think that we need to, I think that we should understand also the leveraging power of governments in order to buy technology. So when governments, they, purchase technology, they can put kind of boundaries. This is a soft law, but it's not a soft law. It's kind of a pragmatism, it's using the purchasing power of, the capacity of the whole government, the federal administration and the local administrations to set specific standards. So if the government buys this, it's because it means that, okay, it has some level of ethics, it has some level of interest, and it complies with some specific standards. I think we need to think about that too. And about the risk management and risk-based and impact management. In the council, we were going again with Luis, that she spoke in a magnificent way. The Secretariat prepared a risk and impact-based management prepared by the Alan Turing Institute here. So I think that it's non-binding. You can use whatever you want, but I think it sets an interesting standard of how to measure things that happen using AI in terms of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law.
I think that the quote, one you just shared with us, was pretty much summarized what I have to say. I think that it's very important that we just try to do something and that we're pragmatic. And I think when it comes to AI regulation, I think we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and we just kind of have to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, exactly. Building on top of that, I think we all agree that when it comes to AI, there is a lot less we know that we ought to, we should do, and we want to. And I think the operative word there is we, and we have to get together and try to make progresses towards that. And I'm a big fan of learning by doing when there's a lot of unknowns. So going back to the importance of being iterative and having the humility of not repeating our mistakes. And as we're doing all of these things, I think it's really important to stay inclusive and stay science-backed.
Paloma.
Thanks. I remark a point to Argentina. We need the collaboration and participation of the private sector, because if the private sector does not recognize or give validity to this governance, its effectiveness will be limited. And active participation of large companies is crucial to addressing inequalities and fostering global economic growth. And this is a big challenge for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Elena.
Yes, I agree with the necessity to act even in an uncertainty, but that also needs some adaptation of culture inside authorities and sometimes legal frameworks that will let authorities decide outside formal boundaries. And that is a very concrete limit. And so I think that we have also to work on that to transform authorities so that they can be flexible in their approaches.
Thank you. Well, one of the remarks that I want to say is we do not need to wait until there's AI legislation. I mean, if AI is already a medical device and it's not safe for humans, we are, regardless of the... Oh, sorry. Sorry. I get enthusiastic. Sorry. So if there is an AI in a medical device and it's not safe for people, regardless of the companies, we are probably going to take it off the market if it's not safe. So it's not a greenfield that we're starting here, but there are new challenges and new impacts, and for that you need new laws. But I totally agree, Alexander and Ellen. It's practical approach. We just need to get started. We just need to be doing whatever we need to do, risk-based, and together I'm sure we're going to do as well as possible. So I want to thank this panel for all their insights and views. Thank you very much, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you. What?
We're back at 2.
We reconvene at 2, and in the card that you have with your name, there's a coupon for the lunch. Okay. Okay.
Only for the speakers. And the restaurant is on the 7th floor.
¿Qué pasó?